Hi, hello. So, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different, and we're over in the productivity zone, aka sat at my home office desk. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be tier ranking every main book in the Dresden Files series. So I'm not going to go through the short story collections because I've only read some of those short stories, so I can't really rank them, and I don't know how I'd rank them anyway because, you know, they're all up and down. So I don't want this video to be 10,000 hours long, so we're just going to go straight in with Stormfront, which is book number 1. Now, Stormfront is a really excellent book. I think that a lot of people say that the Dresden Files doesn't really get good until like book 4, but I actually would disagree, and I think that I would put Stormfront in a B tier. So what we're saying there is that it's not, you know, it's solid. I would say B is kind of a solid. And then C would be kind of a not 100% sure about this, and then D would be kind of a I found this book lacking, if that makes sense, which is quite difficult really, because I enjoyed all of the Dresden Files books. There was never a single reading experience where I was like, wow, I wish this would end, you know, I wish I had read a different book. So maybe we should, do you know what? We're going to put that down into C, and I want it to be clear. Hello, this is my cat, Barry. By the way, I don't know whether you can see him on the camera. Say hi, Barry. Okay, he's not very talkative, but he loves sitting on my lap whenever I sit at my desk. So, yeah, I think we're going to pop this down in C, because otherwise there's not going to be a single book in D. And I want C to be clear that C is still, you know, like in you know, school, C is a passing grade. C is a good book, but it's not the best when compared to the others. So if we're tier ranking these books together, I think then, yeah, we're going to need to start with Stormfront in that C tier. Although, again, to be clear, this is a good book and it's earning a passing grade. So the next book is Full Moon, and this is probably the only one that's going to go in the D tier. So Full Moon is, in my opinion, the worst Dresden book. It is still good, and I really like the stuff that comes from Full Moon. So like Billy the Werewolf, and some stuff with Marcone. But one of the big issues I think with Full Moon is that it resets the character progress that Harry and Murphy made in Stormfront, and she just kind of doesn't trust him for no apparent reason. So because of that kind of relationship reset, I'm gonna put Full Moon in D. And also I think that werewolves are maybe the least interesting villains that Dresden fights. So let's go in now to Grave Peril. Now, Grave Peril is the introduction of Michael Carpenter, and so it's real hard for me not to immediately put that in the A tier, but I'm still gonna. So Michael's an excellent character. I think Grave Peril is where Dresden really set Butcher kind of, he says that he had planned the entire series when he wrote Stormfront, but I don't really believe that. I think that he might have had some ideas on where he wanted it to go, but it doesn't seem to be until Grave Peril that we actually see him put those plans into motion. And there's stuff that comes up in Grave Peril that he continues to refer to much later on in the series. So Grave Peril, is probably the first truly excellent book in the Dresden Files, and that's why it's going in at an A ranking. So Summer Night is has one of the best endings of the Dresden Files series. Summer Night is basically where the the knight of the summer court. So he's like the soldier for the summer fae. He's murdered, and Mab, who becomes a massive character later on, she hires Dresden to find out who killed him because she didn't do it. But everyone kind of thinks that she did it. Now, Summer Night is going to go into B. Now, I really love the ending, as I said, of Summer Night. I'm sorry, cat hair up my nose now. I really love the ending of Summer Night. However, I think that I'm kind of less interested in the Fae early on. And then, aside from Mab, I feel like we don't get that many interesting characters who kind of stick around. So you do get a couple of characters that stick around for later books and in interesting roles as well. For example, the new Summer Knight and the new Summer Lady. However, I just don't think that this book is probably, it's kind of the start of the big Fae story, but it's also, because it's the start, it's kind of the least interesting Fae novel, if that makes sense. Let's move on now. So let's go into, so this is a number 5. So Butcher writes, Butcher has created these characters called the Denarians, which are people who are kind of possessed by fallen angels or demonic. I think they're fallen angels, and the Denarians are in every 5th book, so they're in 5, 10, 15, and the Denarians are headed up by Nicodemus, who is like, I think he's meant to be like Satan's right-hand man, basically, on Earth. And he's probably the best villain in the Dresden Files. And Nicodemus, again, he's the villain of all of these for every 5 books. And unfortunately, fortunately, I think this is going to be the first one that goes in the S tier. So Deathmask is truly excellent. We get way more time with the Knights of the Sword, Knights of the Cross even. We're introduced to Sanya and I want to say Ichiro. I'm terrible with some character names sometimes. All of the Knights of the Cross are excellent. You get to meet Nicodemus, who again, best villain in the series, and there's some really cool action in this one. And some big plot development. So Deathmasks is the first S tier Dresden novel, and I think I would say the same to anyone reading it, that Deathmasks is the first proper 5-star read in the Dresden Files. Next up, we have Blood Rights. Now, Blood Rights is the one that's set on a porn set. So Dresden is helping an adult film producer track down someone who's kind of cursed his movie and he's trying to protect the adult movie stars. This unfortunately leaves us open to probably a bit too much of Horny Harry. So Blood Rights, whilst it has a really truly excellent plot development that carries on for the rest of the series that I think is really good, and it deepens Harry's relationship with a particular character, which I absolutely loved. And we're also introduced to Lara Wraith, who is Thomas's older sister, and kind of one of the heads of the White Vampire Court. And she is an excellent character as well, and I think that she gets some more play later in the series, and she's basically always good whenever she turns up and always interesting. So Blood Rights gives us a lot for later books, but Blood Rights in and of itself is not a great story, and I think it's probably the weakest climax in the books, because there doesn't feel like there's kind of a big avalanche of story and action and a big fight at the end. It just kind of feels like it ends with a whimper, in a way that none of the other Dresden books really do. So next up, we have number 2 in the S rank. It is Deadbeat. So Deadbeat is the book where we're introduced to a couple of interesting characters, one of which is called Cal, and he goes on to become a big thing later. But also Deadbeat is excellent because it's the first time where Butcher really goes in depth and in detail into how the magic works with necromancy. So he talks about how necromancers need to replicate the heartbeat of anything they bring back to life using a drum beat of some kind. So you have some necromancers will just tap a rhythm on their leg. Some of them will use an actual drum. We have one that's using like a bass beat coming out of a giant set of speakers. So there's loads of different ways in which you can do the beat. And Deadbeat, again, it's a great name for the novel, but also on top of that, I think probably one of the coolest endings, one of the coolest kind of big action scenes in the whole series. Deadbeat was kind of where I really, really and truly got like, right, I'm obsessed with these books, so I'm going to read them back to back to back to back. And we also get introduced to Butters in Deadbeat, who is an awesome character that we continue to see later on in the books. Proven Guilty. Now, Proven Guilty is going to be an A rank book. Proven Guilty is where Harry has to save somebody he knows from being executed by the wardens for using black magic, or like mind control magic, I think it is. So Proven Guilty is a really good book. You get some more time with the warden characters that you've met in Deadbeat, and you also get to spend a lot of time with Morgan, who's been kind of this antagonist to Harry throughout the first few books, because he's kind of Harry's he's like Harry's watcher to make sure that Harry's not breaking the rules of magic. And this book's genuinely really fun. You get to spend a lot of time with a certain member of the supporting cast, which carries on through the books. And I think that they're a great addition to Harry's kind of inner circle rather than just being kind of a fringe character. Proven Guilty is another like really, really solid book that I really enjoyed. So White Knight is our next book. White Knight is... I think White Knight is going to join Summer Knight on the B tier. So White Knight, Harry has to clear Thomas's name as he's under suspicion of murdering magical practitioners. There's some really interesting stuff with these magical practitioners, and the way that Harry kind of big times them, and is very much like, you shouldn't be using magic because you're not as powerful as I am, and you're just going to get yourself hurt or killed. I really liked White Knight, and I think that the central mystery of what's going on is really good, but I don't know. It just the story doesn't really stick out to me. I know that there's kind of some stuff that continues on after this book again. Butcher is basically building and building and building from kind of Death Masks onwards, or maybe even Grave Peril onwards. But White Knight is probably... White Knight and Blood Rights, these two are two of the weakest later, kind of the weakest post, the weakest middle of the road books. Now Now, next up, we have Small Favour. Small Favour gets us Mab coming back to call in a favour from Harry. Mab calling in a favour for Harry. Sorry, I was just reading the little description here from the back of the book that I've got on another window. Small Favour is a Nicodemus book. It's got the Denarians in it, so it instantly goes straight in the S tier. I think that it's a genuinely awesome book. I love how much time you spend with Marcone in this one. I think that all the Nicodemus books are the best books in the series, with probably one or two exceptions in terms of my personal favourites. I think the Small Favour definitely is an S tier book. Turncoat. So here's a fun one. I think that I confused. No, I didn't confuse Proven Guilty with Turncoat, but Turncoat is it's not like a sequel to Proven Guilty, but there's a lot going on in Turncoat with Morgan, which I may have confused from Proven Guilty. But Turncoat is a really, really awesome book. This one is this one the best A tier book? I think so. I haven't really ordered anything yet, but I do think that Turncoat might be my favourite A tier book. You get a lot of really interesting stuff going on in there, and that's where you get some of the White Council politics storylines, which I really enjoyed. Next up, you know it is Changes. Now, Changes is the book that when everyone says, read the Dresden Files, Changes is the book where they go, oh, just wait until you get to Changes. Just you wait until you get to Changes. Now, is this a grade S or a grade A? I think this has got to go into the S tier. And interestingly, everybody says in Changes it's like a big shock value. There's a lot of there's big shocks in this book, and absolutely there are big shocks in this book. But I think the most interesting thing about this is how much character time we get with Harry and with a lot of the members of his supporting cast. I think the final fight at the end is maybe, if you discount Battleground, the best elongated action scene in the series. It's the one where you get the most kind of Avengers Assemble style, bringing everyone together stuff, and I really loved that. It adds a couple of elements to kind of the Dresden lore, as it were, that are kind of persist and that I really, really love. I think I have to say Changes is a grade S. When I first got told about Changes, and I got told this is the one, everything's building to, this is what you've got to, you've got to wait for Changes. It was one of those things where I was like, I think this is going to get so built up in my head, the expectation's going to be built up so much that I'm not going to enjoy it as much because I'm expecting so much. But that didn't happen with Changes. It honestly still, despite how high my expectations have been built, surpassed those expectations. So do with that information what you will, but Changes is a truly, truly excellent book. Ghost Story up next. Ghost Story is great because it's one of the only ones that really pops out of the mold. So I'm not going to really talk too much about what's going on with Harry in Ghost Story because that's a massive spoiler. And while I'd be shocked if you are watching this video and you are not a huge Dresden fan and you haven't read those books, I do want to tread around major spoilers. So Ghost Story, with very little context, is very different to the previous books. Dresden has to kind of think his way out of a lot of problems instead of just fireball his way out of those problems. And Dresden also is kind of, he's in such a different place emotionally and intellectually and physically that it makes the book a real breath of fresh air. Ghost Story is a truly excellent book. Again, at this point, I'm gonna say pretty much every book's going to be a grade A or a grade S, and this is a grade A, and not for any particular reason of it not of having any downsides, more just that otherwise I'd pretty much be filling up this whole grade S row, because I think pretty much every book from Turncoat onwards is a 5-star read. So there you have it. Ghost Story, that was Ghost Story, was a grade A. Now, Cold Days. Cold Days is a really good book, and there's a great twist that comes in at the end of Ghost Story that I thought was really cool. And you get to see kind of what's been happening in the background that you weren't aware of what was going on during Ghost Story. Cold Days is another grade A. Cold Days is very close to being a grade S. And kind of so is Ghost Story, really. But Cold Days is kind of a mix between something new, but it still keeps a lot of elements of the case file style book. Whereas things like, for example, Changes is very much not in the case file mold. You know, he's not really investigating a mystery and doing a thing. He's kind of all action on the road in Changes. Cold Days is kind of that mix, so it is very high action, but there is still something that he's looking into, and you get a real insight. You know, Cold Days, I'm sure you can guess, we spend a lot of time with the Winter Fae in this one, and seeing into that world is really exciting. Next up, Skin Game. Now, is Skin Game the best Dresden Files book? I think you'd probably be hard pushed to say no, that it was not the best. This is another Nicodemus book, and this one, Harry has to work with Nicodemus to rob. I mean, I'll tell you now, this is not a spoiler really, it's literally on the back of the book. Harry has to help Nicodemus steal the Holy Grail from Hades in a hell dimension. So it's an Ocean's 11 style heist with loads of different characters from previous books, but also characters that are introduced for the first time to be useful in later books, I'm sure. And it's just so good. I don't think there's anyone who would say that Skin Game was not the best Dresden. Well, they might say it's not the best, but for me, it's definitely the best Dresden Files book. I absolutely loved it. It's got action, it's got intrigue, it's got mystery, and it's got some truly awesome stuff with Hades and Harry and all that, and Nicodemus especially as well. It's great to see all those characters doing some interesting stuff. Next up, Battleground. No, wait, Peace Talks is next, isn't it? So Peace Talks is a cool one because Peace Talks and Battleground were originally one slightly larger novel. And when it got too big, Butcher was like, okay, I'm going to cut it in half. But what that and kind of expand both a little bit. And what you end up with there is that Peace Talks doesn't really have that big action, dramatic Dresden File book ending. But Battleground is all big, dramatic Dresden Files ending. So it's like people talk about Brandon Sanderson having the Sanderlanche, which is where his everything kind of starts building and building and building and building and going into high gear and being this huge epic action sequence. Basically, Battleground is the Sanderlanche for Peace Talks. Peace Talks does still have its build up, and it still does have kind of a big confrontation at the end, but Peace Talks is probably, I'm going to say Peace Talks is an A book, but it's almost a B. No, Peace Talks is an A, and I think Peace Talks is an A because we get a lot of really good character development, because Butcher's not building that big catastrophic ending. We end up with Harry and the crew, and we have to spend a lot more time with them. So I did really enjoy that one, and I really like seeing. It's called Peace Talks because it's all about a set of peace talks between all the different factions in the supernatural realm, and Harry is kind of Harry's there representing one particular faction. Is it the White Council or is it not? Yeah, that's an interesting one for you to find out if you read the books. So yeah, Peace Talks, genuinely really cool, and I like that a lot of the tension comes from conversations rather than the standard Dresden tension being, is Harry going to defeat this monster with a fireball or what have you. Speaking of defeating monsters with fireballs, we're on Battleground. Now, when I finished Battleground, I was pretty emotional. It was I had read Peace Talks and Battleground back to back over like 3 days. I devoured these books. I barely did anything else but read them. I absolutely loved reading these books. I don't know if I would put. I rated both of them, I think, 5 out of 5 stars when I rated them on Goodreads. But now, I think Battleground, while genuinely an excellent book with a lot of huge surprises, with a lot of really emotional moments, and with the kind of car crashing of the supernatural world into the normal world, absolutely loved it. The villain that you get in Battleground that kind of turns up in Peace Talks is really terrifying and threatening and cool. But if I'm looking at that top tier set of 5, I'm looking at the Nicodemus books, which I absolutely love. Looking at Deadbeat and the necromancy story. We're looking at Changes, which is very similar to Battleground in that there is no kind of mystery and case for him to uncover. Changes is more actiony as well, and has those big emotional moments in the same way that Battleground does. But I do think that Changes executes that better than Battleground, just very slightly. And I think that Battleground, deserves that place in the A tier. So, that's all the Dresden books. The one thing that I have read that is side story is I did read Aftermath, which is the aftermath of Changes. This is a novella, and it's from Murphy's point of view. It's not really full novella length. I think it's only like 80 pages maybe. But I really enjoyed Aftermath, and if Aftermath had been on this tier maker, I think I'd put that in the A tier as well. I did actually want to read The Law, which is the first which is a novella written by Jim Butcher set after Battleground. I decided not to read it this month because it is Self-Pub September, which is the event that I'm doing where I'm reading only self-published books, and it would feel a bit, I don't know, it's not like Jim Butcher is self-published or indie published in any way. Yes, the law is on Kindle Unlimited, but I think that's more just because, you know, he wants to get more people to read it. So I haven't read the law yet. When I do read the law, I will put a review on the channel, and I will let you know what tier I'd grade it in at the end of the end of the video. Now, do you agree with my Dresden Files tier ranking? I'm sure a lot of people will not agree. I'm sure people might put some of the later books further down in the rankings. Some people might even say that I've definitely got Proven Guilty and Turncoat mixed up. Who's to say? Who will ever know? But I did unfortunately read some of these almost a year ago, so sorry if I have mixed up anything, but I still think that this is pretty much how I feel, and I think that's pretty accurate. So yeah, if you've got a different opinion to me, pop it down in the comments. I know that there are some people who don't like changes and who really don't like battlegrounds and peace talks. If you're one of those people, let me know what you think and put it in the comments below. Try and steer clear of spoilers or clearly mark them with a couple of line breaks so that people know not to read your comment. Are there any other series that you think could be cool to tier rank? So I have read pretty much all of the Cosmere, so I could do a Cosmere tier ranking. And I'm doing this one in place of a tag video, simply because there's no interesting tags that I can see that have been posted recently that I kind of want to jump on board with. So this is kind of the Tag Tuesday video, if you will. Anyway, as I said, drop a comment below. If you haven't read the Dresden Files, tell me whether this has excited you and made you want to read it, if you're seeing how many books I'm saying are basically 5-star books out of the 17. And if you aren't interested in the Dresden Files, let me know that as well. So thanks again for watching along with this video. As I always say, like, comment and subscribe to the channel for more tier videos, and there's also going to be some self-published book reviews going up this week, and I will speak to you in my next video. Bye.